Well, here we go.
Here we go. Welcome back, y'all. It's episode 7 of Left, Right, and Local.
That's right. And today's episode is titled Who's Watching the Watchmen? This is going to be a deep dive into the SCCJA. We teased it a little at the end of the last episode.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad we're here. And I just want to say the fact that we're here is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Let's see. I started today late. We started, Dan, your husband, and I started building for my store, the farmhouse furniture that we build, we make it to order. We started today at 10. We finished at 10.
Yeah.
And it's now
12:05.
Yeah, 12 o'clock in the evening, and we are still here. I'm so grateful to Dan for how hard he worked today to make it all happen. Tomorrow, we're loading 7 pieces of handmade custom furniture that are going to, I think, 5 different states. These are all folks who have one thing in common. They asked me if they could get their stuff before Thanksgiving.
And we will deliver before Thanksgiving.
And that is great. So, getting on to episode 7, tell me a little bit about what we're going to do today.
So, we are going to dive into the SCCJA, which is the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy. We're going to be talking about decertifications, the 9 deadly sins. The SCCJA considers are those that require decertification. You would think they would require decertification, but we have one officer that we know of, a local officer that is now retired.
Well, 2 technically.
Yeah. 2 technically.
Yeah, and actually 3. We'll get into that.
Yeah, and they have hit multiples on these 9 deadly sins, but for some reason they still hold their certification.
Yeah, and
why?
Well, we're gonna ask and hopefully maybe give our answers to that. I would say that on the certification front, on the surface, the process seems pretty straightforward. Right? You train, you pass the exams, you become a law enforcement agent. But what happens when an officer breaks the law or misuses force or lies on a form or just simply shirks their oath? Who holds them accountable? The agency that hired them? Do they do it? Does the municipality do it? Does the state do it? What happens when an officer moves from one agency to another despite a troubled past? In South Carolina, the SCCJA is the gatekeeper for certification and decertification.
That's right.
So we're going to explore today about the real world gaps in oversight and protection for the public. And
I will tell you that Tim emailed Swindler.
I emailed Mr. Swindler at the SCCJA. He's the director. He's the HMFIC, as it were. I'm not going to go beyond the acronym because I promised Marty I wouldn't. But he didn't get back to us, which wasn't necessarily a surprise. He's a busy guy and has a lot of important stuff going on. However, that left us with another alternative, which was to contact the publicity department there at the SCCJA. You did that.
I did that with a phone call and never received a call back.
Right. So we are left to our own devices where our own experiences and where our own research has left us. And I think that's actually in a pretty good place to be able to proceed with this discussion. So buckle up. It's time for Who Watches the Watchmen.
The Watchmen. I'm just going to kind of give you guys an overview of 3 officers that have recently been in the news. And we're just going to kind of go over what they did, what they're charged with, and then we're going to kind of dive into the SCCJA.
Sure.
All right. So first one, we've got Sean Edward Murphy of Orangeburg County. He served as the police chief, and you and I have personal experience with this gentleman, if you can call him that.
I can't.
No, but this guy, we'll say guy. So Murphy served as police chief in the town of Ellery. He was charged by the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division with malicious injury to personal property after being caught on surveillance video at the courthouse in Orangeburg County. He intentionally scratched a vehicle, and it was his girlfriend's ex-boyfriend's vehicle. They were in some kind of custody hearing with their daughter, and Sean decided that it would be a great idea to vandalize the vehicle.
But I just want to be clear where Sean Murphy is concerned. this is small potatoes compared to what he's actually done.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about what Sean actually did to JD. I'll talk a little bit about what he did to me, and we'll go from there.
Yeah.
And I'll keep it brief. Where JD is concerned, JD Bonds was smart enough to video Sean using glasses that shot video. And I'm not talking about Meta. I think this was before the big Meta craze that's going on now. And he recorded Sean bullying him, badgering him, trying to intimidate him, using unbelievable tactics to actually break the rules that were set by the family court, wherein he was not supposed to be present at the transfer of their daughter. Sean set it up to meet at the drop-off point Heather, his girlfriend, who is the former fiance of JD Bonds and with whom she shares a daughter.
Right.
They set up for the transfer of the child to happen at Holly Hill Police Department. Holly Hill Police Department is run by a guy named Josh Dieter, who happens to be a very close friend of Sean Murphy. Krista, you and I were present at family court when Sean Murphy had a year-long order of protection granted against him by the family court magistrate. His only witness on his side was Josh Dieter.
Correct.
They both submitted false forms to the court. We witnessed it. We watched the magistrate get rather upset at the notion that these forms were not signed correctly. They were supposed to be signed by two officers. They were signed by one. They both had the same problem with them. These two geniuses decided it was a good idea to go into court, lie. They tried to slander JD, tried to undermine his case, didn't work. Sean had the order of protection granted against him, ended up in the NCICS system. That is way worse than getting out of his car. I think it was his squad car, was it not?
It was. He was in full uniform and in a town of Ellery police car.
Getting out, pulling something out of his trunk, and then purposefully scratching JD's truck around it on several sides. That's bad enough for a police officer.
And then look directly at the camera.
But to get yourself in a situation where there's hours of video of you trying to intimidate and bully a member of the public, that's worse. That's just the beginning with this guy. Right. Here's my experience with him. And everything that I tell you, I can prove. So if anyone wants to get with me and demand proof, please do. Sean Murphy. He came to my property to bully me when he didn't like a voice message that I left for his friend. I was well within my rights complaining about a gas leaf blower being used at 6 a.m. on a Saturday around a building my wife and I own in which we have tenants who live. I said, using the colorful language I have, hey, you could do this maybe a little later, but at 6 a.m. on a Saturday, you wouldn't do it in your own neighborhood. Don't do it in mine. Sean thought that was a good idea to come over, hassle me because apparently he thought I hassled his friend. I told him to take off and he told me he would deal with it a different way. He then on that same day falsified an accusation, said that I assaulted someone when I didn't, made it up, gave it to his assistant police chief, Earl Kinley, who then tracked me down to question me about it. When I told Earl, hey, let's take a look at the video and you'll be able to see how I spoke to this gentleman on the street and how I didn't assault anybody, he said, I don't need to do that. I know how this goes. That's a quote. I got so pissed off that instead of backing down, I went and tracked down Sean's friend, who is also a pastor at a retail church on the street here. And I recorded him admitting to me that he never told Sean Murphy that I assaulted anyone. I then played that recording for Earl. Earl said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to talk to Sean. That took weeks to be able to get that meeting. I got that meeting. I recorded it. In the meeting, Sean tells me in agreement that he can do anything he wants to me, among other things. That night, he tries to break into my property. He's trying the locks on my doors, doesn't realize doesn't realize I'm in my workshop. I open up the door to him and he makes up some lie as to why he needs to talk to me. And you can see him making up the lie in the moment. Tries to break into my property another night. And then you hear he and his girlfriend discussing the location of my building cameras as they go around my property. That all happened late at night. Captured him putting his license plates back on when he took them off to bully Earl. Mike Mann did that as well. pulled me over in a phony roadblock with his friend, Jared J. Rod Goldman, the former police chief of Sally, South Carolina, who was not a policeman at the time that he came to Ellery in one of Ellery's police cars. Three of them, Mike Mann, Jared J. Rod Goldman, and Sean Murphy, pulled me over. I said, "What are you pulling me over for?" They said they're looking for someone. Told me if I touch my phone, he's going to take it. This is a guy who is a total and utter criminal.
And he's out of control.
Totally out of control, has no business being a police officer. What he's done to others, I know what he's done to JD. I know what he did to me. I know what he's done to all of us in social media. Sean is a guy who has absolutely zero business being certified. He's already been decertified once for allegedly sexually assaulting a girl in St. George. Got decertified. They recertified him. Then he got fired numerous times from other agencies for things like lying,
abuse of power, failure to follow policy or departmental policy and procedure, misrepresentation of employment-related information, dishonesty to his employer. It's just a laundry list.
I think he fought that, but I think it was theft of his badge or what have you.
We have a 71-page report from the Criminal Justice Academy detailing his policing history. And it's damning.
So here you have a guy who, yeah, he got busted on video damaging JD Bond's truck purposefully, but that's small potatoes compared to what he's done and what he's capable of. That guy
and what he continues to do
needs to be decertified, and he's terrorized the community using social media, using multiple accounts, maybe more than 10. He's been doing it for years, and he needs to be held accountable by the agency, and that certification needs to be revoked permanently this time.
Let's
Tell me about these other two.
All right, we've got William Billy Squires out of Beaufort County. This was a deputy master sergeant at the Berkeley County Sheriff's Office. He was terminated October 3rd, 2025, so fairly recently, after video surfaced of him pointing a firearm at several teenagers off duty. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen this video, but I have. And this guy was completely out of control. The sheriff confirmed multiple agency policy violations. The deputy refused a breath alcohol test, was suspected of being under the influence, and allegedly used a firearm in an off-duty incident with no clear threat of serious bodily harm. The agency has requested the revocation of his law enforcement certification. That has not happened yet.
Now, that agency, the sheriff's office.
Yeah. That is correct, which we'll get into.
Now, interestingly, that's actually a case where it's working.
The system is
working, right? Because the agency.
Yes.
Now, here's something important. It's not the agency that actually held this guy accountable. It's the ether, because this thing went viral.
That's correct.
Had it not gone viral, nobody may have known about it.
It may have just been brushed right under the rug.
Right. Maybe the kids would go home and tell mom and dad what happened, and mom and dad would call the sheriff's department, and maybe the sheriff's department would tell them, okay, we're investigating or whatever. But the point is that it could very easily disappear.
Yes.
It shows the leverage you have in the accountability department when you can get to the public.
Right.
At a certain ferocity, it demands a response. And so you could make the argument that the response you're seeing is not really the system working. It's really the system having to work because it doesn't have another option.
Exactly. Because too many people know.
Right. Not most people, their encounter with the police in the event that it is nefarious in some way or malicious, they don't have the benefit of a viral video to turn the screws. And so very often nothing happens.
That's right. I go back to Sean. Let's go back to Sean. The video of him vandalizing that vehicle at the Orangeburg County Courthouse, you and I saw it because it was played multiple times in the hearing.
Yes.
And we were there. That video never went public. And there are still people to this day in the small town of Ellery that say he didn't do it.
Yeah, of course. But those people are more comfortable with their head in the sand, turning their back to reality, allowing this kind of nefarious shit to persist. And you know what? That's you sow those seeds and you get those trees. So
You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. I mean, that's
that
it.
came from another policeman.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? Did.
Interesting. And I love that.
All right. So Christopher Moore, Richland County. Now this is interesting. This guy he was terminated in June of 2025 after investigations revealed that he used his position improperly. We've heard that before.
Okay. But in what way?
Specifically, he allegedly obtained a female's contact information during a traffic stop and then used his department issued phone to communicate with her personally. Now, this was not his first go at this. In October of 2023, when he was employed and then terminated by the Marlborough County Sheriff's Office for departmental policy violations involving sexual activity while on duty. Was not criminally charged. And this is the perfect example of this guy misbehaving while on duty 2 years prior. 2 years later, he starts to pull the same stuff again by getting a girl's contact information and contacting her off duty.
I think he needs to go into porn.
Yeah.
Because then you can do all that stuff on duty.
That's right. There you go.
Right?
There you go. He could be an investigator for these sex shops.
He could still wear the policeman's uniform.
Yeah.
You know?
He could go in and investigate the illegal strip club out on 301.
No, I'm saying he could, roll the cameras. He comes up, he's got the whole outfit on.
Yeah.
Knock, knock. Hello, ma'am. I'm here to investigate.
Something.
Right.
So
not that I've seen it. Not that I've seen
no.
it.
No. Termination is for official misconduct and misuse of authority.
Okay.
All right.
So was he terminated?
He was terminated, but I have not been able to find any record of decertification.
Right. So
now
we don't know whether the system worked in this case so far or hasn't.
Right.
We don't know where that stands. Correct. But these are examples of officers doing wrong in our area. There's more to add to the story. We'll go ahead and proceed. So we're going to take a break. We're going to pay the bills and come right back after that.
Looking for something timeless? At Archaic, we bring history back to life with antique and vintage furnishings, plus made-to-order farmhouse furniture built to last for generations. Step away from mass-produced. Step into Archaic. Find us at archaicmodern.com.
Now that we've paid the bills, we can start chatting again.
And we actually paid them ourselves because it's our commercials.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. I look forward to the day where somebody else is doing that.
That's right. That's right. Me too. By the way, you guys can't advertise. All you got to do is email us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Where do they email us?
At info@leftrightlocal.com.
We're back?
We're back.
All right, let's begin by unpacking what the SCCJA does around certification. The SCCJA's Certification and Compliance Unit handles the issuance of law enforcement certifications, and it tracks the employment and the separations of what amounts to roughly 16,000 officers in South Carolina.
That's right.
And it does this. It monitors mandatory retraining notifications. It handles decertification, and it processes pre-employment checks for officers who are transferring from another state. It's worth noting that under South Carolina law, specifically the South Carolina Law Enforcement Training Act, the SCCJA via a council is empowered to set up minimum standards. They monitor agencies and temporarily hold certifications, hold them if an agency is non-compliant. If they're non-compliant. So in short, certification is not just pass the academy and go get a badge, but in theory, it's an ongoing process, and there are mechanisms for separation and tracking and punishment for misconduct.
So when we have an officer that transfers from one agency to another, sending agency does have to submit personnel change in status, date of resignation, whether or not the officer is in good standing. And if the officer is not in good standing, they track or they report how long they've been out of compliance.
No, wait, let me stop you. This is
Okay.
the agency they're going to.
This is the agency they're
They're
leaving.
leaving. Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense. So
Yes.
so the agency they're leaving is obligated to report those things.
Yeah.
I interrupted you. Is there more?
How long they've been out of compliance and if additional training is needed. So if they're out of compliance because they've missed a training, what's needed? How long is it going to take? How long have they been out? What do we need to do to get them back into compliance?
And then the agency they're going to, do they have some obligation?
That is new hire paperwork. So they have to just fill out the paperwork, make sure that they've got copies of the certification. It's interesting because I could not locate what the requirements are on background checks for these officers. I would assume that the receiving agency would be charged with that. And it's rather interesting that here in LRE, we have not historically done full background checks. The only thing that our mayor does is make sure that the certification is current, the training is current, and that's it. So if there are any marks against their policing history for misconduct or anything, our town here in LRE does not do full background checks. Now, that may have changed since Earl Kinley has come back, but historically, it's just making sure that the certification is current.
Well, it hasn't worked well that if that's their current protocol or their former, it hasn't worked well given how many
That's right.
officers we've been through. So it brings up important questions. One, how fast does the SCCJA act when misconduct is alleged? But before we answer that, we get into the question of how does the SCCJA come across these allegations? Now, you're talking about it.
Yeah.
Ideally for the SCCJA, they want the current agency of employment, where the allegations stem. In other words, wherever that officer is employed, whatever he or she did wrong, allegedly, the agency that employs them currently is charged with such to the SCCJA. However, you and I know that very often they don't.
That's right. That's
Now,
right.
why? Why would they not report their fellow officer? Well, because he's or she is their fellow officer, their friend, someone they might have worked with for years. Again, we discussed this a little bit in the last episode. You're asking one of the best friends, one of the inner circle, someone who's a friend possibly, or even worse, it could be somebody wrapped up in something that, blowing the lid off of it for one of them means potentially blowing the lid off of it for all of them. So if they all have something to hide, something they have in common or not, knowledge of each other's bad behavior on the job, whatever it might be, there's reason there not to report them. If it's a friendship, there's reason there not to report them. There's reason to allow them to skip on to that next agency. So the SCCJA's protocol here is flawed.
Very flawed. Very flawed. And, my idea is why are we allowing people within that inner circle to make the decisions about an officer's misconduct? Why do we not have an outside panel?
So let's use an example of where we've actually seen this happen, right?
Right here?
Okay, let's take the example of Mike Mann, who was a deputy here for a while.
Right?
But
Right?
before he came here, he was at Holly Hill.
Correct.
Now remember, stick with the story. Holly Hill, the police department is run by Police Chief Josh Dieter, who's a close friend of Sean Murphy, right?
Right.
Okay, so Mike Mann shoots himself in the leg while off duty,
Mhm.
and an investigation ensues. There
Yeah.
is allegedly some chatter about, did he shoot himself? Did his girlfriend shoot him? Was it a domestic dispute? What was happening?
Right.
And Mike, I think, took the position that, hey, I was cleaning my service weapon and I shot myself mistakenly. So as part of the investigation, they do a psych evaluation. In the psych evaluation, they come to the conclusion that he should have counseling once per week for a
I
certain
believe
amount
it's
of time.
here.
Right, for an hour once a week,
Right.
or whatever.
Yes.
He declines,
Not just declined, refused.
refused. So he was asked to leave the department. In other words, in order for you to stay, you have to agree to this. If you're not going to agree to it, you have to go. He didn't agree to it, so he went. Where did he go? To the land of misfit toys for police, Ellery.
Yes.
And to Josh Dieter, his current boss, his very good friend, Sean Murphy. So Sean, take
Now,
a minute.
I'm going to interject. On his termination papers from Holly Hill, it specifically says that he is not rehireable.
Okay. And
Because we have his Criminal Justice Academy record as well. And when he left Holly Hill, he is not rehireable.
right, he's not rehireable now. That brings up a question. Was Josh Dieter there when Mike Mann was there? I don't know that. And that's a reasonable question just to make sure, because the reason I mention it is because you're saying that the paperwork said he's not rehireable. And I'm wondering if Josh would have had the strength of character to.
I will look that up. Keep
Okay.
going. I'm going to look it up right now.
Nonetheless, he comes to Ellery, he gets in trouble, and the trouble that he finds here, well, allegations from the police chief who took over after Sean got bounced, David Martin, whose civil suit, which is currently ongoing, alleges that Mike was adjacent to the alleged arson that took place in Ellery, allegedly around the evidence closet. Apparently, someone in the police department or town hall decided it would be a good idea or necessary to burn it down. And David believed that Mike Mann, because he suspected Mike Mann's girlfriend of being the culprit, might have information about it and demanded that he go to SLED to take a polygraph. Mike refused. David dismissed him. So where does he go? He goes back to Holly Hill.
And Josh Dieter has been the police chief at Holly Hill since February 2012.
Okay, so
13 years.
Josh Dieter was there. Ask yourself this question, because it's this simple, the equation.
Right.
An officer is at an agency. He messes up and doesn't follow the required protocol and gets dismissed. He goes to another agency, messes up, doesn't follow the rules, gets dismissed. Goes back to the agency that he was not in compliance with and therefore had to be dismissed, goes back there after a year or so and gets rehired by the same police. So I had to let you go before. You didn't do what we required of you, but some time has gone on. I'm sure there's been some improvements. Let's bring you back. Now, did Josh Dieter tell the SCCJA everything that I just told you? I don't know. I would venture to say, and I recognize this is an assertion, no, he didn't. I don't think Josh Dieter would have called the SCCJA and said, well, listen, a year or two ago, I dismissed this guy because he refused to go to counseling. It was mandatory. He refused it. I had to let him go. Then he went over to Ellery. He got into some trouble there and got dismissed because he wouldn't take the polygraph at SLED. But I've rehired him because some time has gone by. And even though he was not in compliance, I felt that he was rehirable. So, let me put this all down on the form like a good little boy, give you all the information you need, and you let me know that everything's hunky-dory. I seriously doubt that Dieter did that, which means he withheld the truth. And by the way, we're going to get into the 9 deadly sins. SCCJA is a law enforcement agency. If you're withholding the truth from them, you are committing one of the 9 deadly sins.
Right.
The SCCJA's protocol is, yes, we'll certify you. Yes, we have the ability to decertify you. But what we don't have the ability to do is know whether you're fucking up or not. So we're going to rely on your friends to tell us whether or not you are. Problem with that, SCCJA, is that you leave yourself a total and utter blind spot when it comes to actually fulfilling your promise. You are relying on the wrong people. I would suggest the resolution is stop asking the wrong people to give you the information you're looking for, which is the truth.
Right.
And start asking the right people. That's the public. Okay. And by the way, at the SCCJA, if you put a body together that's an investigative body or a group, a panel, they're just police officers. They're going to protect each other.
Right.
So that's why I think this is your idea. A group of citizens.
An outside panel, which is vetted, much like a jury, panel of jurors in a court case. Why not? Why not? We've got police officers behaving badly. They're not being held accountable. and they continue to abuse the public over and over and over again. And nobody looks at the evidence. Nobody looks at the history. Nobody takes the statements from the people that they are abusing.
No, we had to find this information by FOIA-ing this. This is not something that a person is going to do day to day. They're not going to go through the trouble. What I would say is that the SCCJA needs to have severe penalties in place for when a superior at the employing agency does not report within 48 hours a misuse of authority, a breach of the oath, or some illegality from an officer.
And if an officer misbehaves and the proper background checks have not been done, the superior needs to be held accountable for that.
As the SCCJA, you need leverage to make sure they're going to give you the truth, and they're going to give it to you with alacrity. Now, how would that work? Well, for example, in the case that you mentioned first or second of your three officers there, Squires. In Squires' case, that was a viral video.
Right.
So if within 48 hours, the superior officer, it could be proven that he or she knew about it and failed to report it, they could be decertified. Then what you've got is I might be your friend, but I need to put food on the table, and I need to catch my retirement. So I'm going to be a good soldier and do what I'm supposed to do. The SCCJ, as far as I know, doesn't have a protocol like that or any kind of accountability such as that in place. Now, I may be wrong. And the reason I would be wrong is that my research has not revealed to me that truth, nor has Swindler, nor has the person at the PR office over there at SCCJA who didn't answer us. So perhaps those folks will get in touch. And if I'm wrong, please educate me. But from what I've seen so far, the SCCJA relies largely on the employing agency, and the employing agency has many, many, many reasons often not to report that officer's bad behavior. And in Mike Mann's case, never should have been able to go back to Holly Hill. The fact that Mike Mann is currently at Holly Hill is an abomination. First of all, at the very least, he should have had to meet the requirements that got him fired.
Right.
That he failed to meet. And has he? There's been no indication.
No indication that has happened. Now, and I want to bring something else.
Dieter's going to scramble to get his papers in order. I'm sure he'll no, seriously. We've seen guys we've seen them submit false papers before to the court. Again, we'll get into the deadly sins.
Well, and here's another issue that I have. It's a huge problem. In the case of Murphy, when Sean vandalized the vehicle at the county courthouse, he was given PTI, which is pretrial intervention. I do not believe any officer should be given pretrial intervention. Listen, if you're an officer and you break the law, you're done.
Well, hey, even with the PTI, according to what we've learned here, that doesn't get you out of trouble with the SCCJA. Even if it all goes away as if it didn't happen, the SCCJA can still consider it.
Yes.
It can still be grounds for decertification.
It can be.
Right. Now, so we're going to take a break. We are going to be right back after these messages. Stick with us.
Buying, selling, or just curious? Trust Dan Hassel for your property inspection needs. He's licensed, insured, and bonded. Give him a call today at 843-494-3387. Finding the truth beneath your roof.
All right, guys, we're back.
We're back.
Continuing our look at the SCCJA and their role in public safety, that is specifically protecting the public, in this case from bad officers with bad intentions, officers with horrible records, officers with all of the above. Part of the way that they do this, at least part of the way that they brief the public on the responsibilities that they have, is by creating this list they have on their website called the 9 Deadly Sins. These are the things that can result in an officer being decertified. So tell us what those 9 sins are.
All right. The first one, conviction. Plea of guilty, plea of no contest, or admission of guilt, regardless of withheld adjudication. To a felony, a crime punishable by a sentence of more than 1 year, regardless of the sentence actually imposed, if any, or a crime of turpitude in this or any other jurisdiction. Number 2, Lawful use of a controlled substance. Number 3, the repeated use of excessive force in dealing with the public and or prisoners. I will interject. Sean Murphy's policing history does show that he used force and
I think it
repeatedly.
says pushes the boundaries of excessive force, but I want to go back. What does turpentine have to do with anything?
Turpitude.
Oh, turpitude. See, this is the furniture builder in me.
Right.
Sorry.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, turpentine, I mean, if they're sniffing it, it could be. I mean, you get
I think I'm
puffins.
sniffing it in my
I mean,
workshop.
kind of like nitrous oxide
Oh
or
boy, yeah.
nitrous oxide or something to that effect.
Well, now that you mentioned it, I did have I had someone stay over in the Airbnb and leave not one, but 2 huge bottles of nitrous oxide. They left it behind in the room, and I had to call the fire department to
Dispose of.
well, I actually had to call you, and then you told me to call the fire department. And they came. I came over and
Right.
picked them up.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, number 4, dangerous and or unsafe practices involving firearms, weapons, and or vehicles which indicate whether a willful or wanton disregard for the safety of persons or property.
okay, so Mike Mann could fall under that with the discharge of his firearm, cleaning it apparently.
5.
Yes.
This is the one that I have highlighted because every officer that we have talked about this evening has committed this deadly sin. Physical or psychological abuses of members of the public and or prisoners.
Okay, so Sean Murphy
Yes.
has psychologically abused members of the public here for a couple of years running with his phony Facebook pages where he hides behind pseudonyms.
Yep. Like Harry Peters
Yes.
and Richard Johnson.
Yeah, those pseudonyms demonstrate the depth of the man's academic mind.
Right.
He's
Right.
an astronaut.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. All right. Number 6, misrepresentation of employment-related information.
Sean Murphy.
Number 7.
And by the way, that's on his SCCJA report
It is.
more than once. And in fact, he got dismissed. He got fired for that.
All right.
By the way, if we're counting, so far we are at that was 6. And Sean has hit 3 of the 6 so far.
Yes. Number 7, to willfully make false, misleading, incomplete, deceitful, or incorrect statement or statements to a law enforcement officer, a law enforcement agency, or representative.
Sean Murphy, all over it, watched him give misleading statements to the court.
One of those statements, I'll just bring this up since we've already talked about JD. There was a photograph that was submitted at that hearing for the order of protection.
Is that the one where he looked like a member of Poison?
JD was at a Halloween party. And he was sitting on a couch.
No, I was talking about Sean in the blonde wig.
Oh, the blonde wig. Yeah. So Sean showed this picture of JD, and he was, like I said, at a Halloween party. He had his hair braided, and he had on an orange jumpsuit, and he was sitting on a plaid couch. And it was obvious that he was at a Halloween party. But he showed this picture to the court and said that this was a photo of JD in jail after he had stabbed someone 27 times and was charged with attempted murder. So, false information.
Right. But beyond that, I know not that. I'm talking about the form that he submitted to the court that he said was a police report.
Yes.
And that he was trying to convey through it that JD had been accused by Heather, his former fiance, of some kind of abuse or something. Of course, the form was double signed by Sean. Josh Dieter, by the way, did the same, said that that a police report was taken. That was also double signed, even though there should have been 2 signatures from 2 separate officers. They didn't do that. They signed both parts. When the magistrate questioned Dieter about it, Dieter lied. Oh, I don't know how that happened. Shouldn't have happened like that. So those were forms that they retroactively put in place.
Correct.
To try to form some sort of defense for Sean. Fortunately, the magistrate saw through it. She was pissed.
She was.
Notably, she was palpably pissed off.
In fact, right after that happened, she called for.
She said, yeah, she was.
I have to think her exact words were, I have to step away from this.
I don't remember that. I remember her being perturbed and came back and dropped the hammer on him as he deserved.
Yes, yes. Number 8, to willfully make false, misleading, incomplete, deceitful, or incorrect statement or statements to any court of competent jurisdiction or their staff members, whether under oath or not.
Sean Murphy.
Right.
So I think that's 5 that we're at.
Yes.
The 8 that we've read so far.
Yes.
And 9, may I take that?
Yeah.
Willfully make false, misleading, incomplete, or deceitful, or incorrect information on a document, record, report, or form, except when required by departmental policy, by the laws of the state. So that's another one.
So here's
the
my
dude
question.
hits like 5 or 6 of the 9.
Why in the world is this man still holding a valid certification from the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy?
So getting to the subject at hand, because someone needs to report it, and the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy does not have in place mechanisms that call upon them to investigate it themselves when enough information is out in the ether for them to do so. They're not blind or deaf. They know what Sean Murphy has been accused of. They must know by now what's in the lawsuit from David Martin. And look, David Martin is not just a member of the public. He's an insider, having been a police chief, the police chief who replaced Sean. And David Martin had been a friend of Sean's for 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that I'm sure the SCCJA knows to some degree somewhere there what's going on. And if they don't, that's even worse. If they don't, and we do.
That's right.
It's even worse. This issue that the SCCJA allows to persist is really complicity, where these officers who practice bad behavior, agency to agency, moving like a pinball, causing destruction, banging into things like a bull in a china shop, it is complicity. And it's something that they, through policy change, could honorably
nip in the bud.
Well, what they could do is I'm talking about a bit of a revolution there.
Right.
Looking inward, taking responsibility for the protocol they currently have and changing it for the betterment of the people they serve, and that is the public.
Right.
They exist to protect the public.
They do. They do.
Yeah, they do a shit job.
SLED is supposed to police the police. SLED.
And they don't do a good job.
No, they don't.
No,
they don't.
Because they are.
We'll get into that in another.
Yeah, no.
So I want to go into the key steps in the process of decertification.
Okay, let's do
I
it.
think it's important.
Let's do it.
So the first step is the allegation of misconduct. The process begins when the SCCJA receives an allegation of misconduct against an officer. We
just talked.
Had this conversation.
Right.
I contacted the SCCJA and I spoke with an investigator. The investigator told me that municipality, the last place of employment, is the one who files that allegation.
Right. And so by the way, Earl Kinley, our current police chief, told you that as well.
Yes. Yes. So here's the problem. You got a police chief who is the head of the department. He is the head of the police department in the small town of Ellery. We had 3 cops, budgeted for 3 cops. He's good friends with the mayor and the mayor pro tem and the council, and they're going to report him for bad behavior and possibly have his certification revoked. I don't see it happening. The next thing is, once the allegation is reported, they do a hearing request. The officer must request a contested case hearing within, catch this, y'all, 3 years of receiving the allegation. 3 years. So if the allegation is made, the SCCJA does the investigation, decertifies the cop. The cop has 3 years to contest that decertification. I don't think so. Something's not right.
What do you think the 3 years gives? Where's the advantage to the policeman by holding off, other than if there's investigation to be done?
I think once that investigation is done and that decertification has happened, it needs to be a done deal.
Right. But what I'm saying is that the benefit to the officer of having the 3 years to contest it, I mean, the only benefit it seems to me would be if a particularly complex situation
can
that
see that.
requires a lot of investigation on the behalf of the decertified person, maybe then having the time, or maybe it's a more complex set of circumstances that need some playing out to occur. I don't know. I don't I don't mind them having time to fight for their rights or having a recourse to fight for their rights, because an officer could be falsely accused or could have a certain situation where they really weren't the guilty party. And in that case, they should have some road to restore their certification.
And I think that,
And by the way,
look at it.
sorry to interrupt you, but we want them to be able to do that. Look, there's a cost associated with educating these guys and girls.
Mhm.
There's a cost associated with it, not just monetary, but they invest their time in it. They tie their future to it. You don't want people being decertified who shouldn't be. That's not at all what I'm calling for.
That's true. That's true.
What I'm saying is that, look, it's clear that the SCCJA has a focus on integrity and honesty and safe practices. That's on essentially their masthead, right?
Right.
This may be what you want, but your way of maintaining it is horrendous.
Right. And I think, each case, let's take the Squires case. He was caught on video, breathalyzer, the whole 9 yards.
Well, he refused the breathalyzer.
Refused it. It was more than obvious that he was under some type of influence.
Well, that's what they suspect.
The video is terrifying for these young children, young teenagers. Let me rephrase that. They're not children.
But again, the SCCJA's protocol is not really what worked there. What worked, as we already talked about, is ether.
Right.
The viral video is what forced them.
That's right.
That's the lever. Now, you bring up something, though, that's important, which is, where are the levers where the SCCJA is concerned? And I think that the SCCJA has a very strong lever by holding the employing agency's chief accountable for reporting honestly and with alacrity. And if that chief can also be decertified when a decertifiable offense is committed and can be proven, if they are themselves subject to decertification by failing to report it or covering it up or whatever, then I think you would see reporting that would be more consistent with protecting the population rather than protecting the officer.
Well, and let's look at Sean. He's got a history of bad behavior. We have 7 small town police departments that have reported misconduct.
Well, he bounced from one to another.
Right.
And what they do is, like, the SCCJA's documentation that they submitted gives them all this sort of nebulous classifications where they can say, well, it was a voluntary separation, right? Or an involuntary separation, or they were fired, they were terminated, or they resigned, or they retired, right? Okay, retired, got it. Resigned, got it. Terminated, understand that. Voluntary separation, why?
Right.
I mean, I guess what you're saying is that that person resigned and went to another position, right?
What happened to,
In other words,
quit
involuntary
or
separation. Right. Involuntary separation is just another way of saying fired.
Right.
Right. So just put that in there. Terminated. You don't need another option. Simplify.
Right.
They're either terminated
That's
or
right.
not.
That's right.
And you don't need voluntary separation in there. You voluntary separation is a guy who resigned. He resigned from this position to move on to another. Or
So
not.
resigned or terminated.
Resigned.
Those are your options.
No, resigned, terminated, or retired. Those are your options.
Yeah. 3 options.
And they give these other nebulous options to be able to give this officer an ability to sort of leave under a little bit of an obscured, right, truth, and then move on to retain their certification and retain their employment. Mike Mann didn't do what he was supposed to do, got fired, went to another agency where he didn't do what he was supposed to do, got fired from there, went back to the other agency, still having not done what he was supposed to do. Why? Because the SCCJA allowed it. Well, they could say, and they could only say, well, no, we didn't know about it. Well, that's you allowing it.
Right.
So there isn't another
Well,
option. Where's your accountability in being informed? If you don't know about it because you're relying on the wrong person to tell you, I've got a good idea. I'm pretty sure you did something bad. I'm going to call your best friend and ask him.
Right.
It's flawed. It's so
Right.
ridiculously
Right.
flawed that it almost seems kind of silly that you set it up that way. The answer from you, the SCCJA, to this conversation could well be, well, do you have any idea the logistics involved in trying to keep tabs on the 16,000 plus officers we certify in the state?
That's your job.
That's your job. Your job is to be able to figure out the logistics of keeping tabs on them. And if that includes reporting from the employing agency, then you better have levers to keep them in line because you're not getting the truth from them.
Right.
That is crucial.
Yes, it is.
Do you think that there's another option, another good idea that they're not implementing now that they might be able to implement besides this levers idea that I've floated?
I love the levers idea.
Well, I like
but also the outside panel.
I like that
is
too. That's
huge. And I look at that outside panel. This is something that I've talked about at the state house level too. You don't allow other legislators to do ethics hearings on other legislators because they all go to dinner together, they all hang out together, they all party at the bar together after
they all
after
decide it's a
session.
good idea to give themselves raises.
Right.
Most of them, not all of
Yes.
them.
Yes. So you have an outside panel, vetted folks, members of the community, business owners, whomever. You vet them just like you do the panel of jurors
Mhm.
in a court case.
I do think that there needs to be an aspect of the SCCJA that monitors the press and monitors developments that pop up from one agency to another, from one municipality to another.
Right.
And in other words, how could you not know what's going on in this town with vis-a-vis Sean Murphy? How do you not know?
Look at Caroline from Live 5 News. We recorded the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
The lawsuit got dropped in our lap on a Tuesday or Wednesday evening. Wednesday evening, I think. We recorded that night. By Friday, Live 5 was contacting us directly saying we want to interview now.
Right. That's the news doing what the news does. But what I'm
Right.
saying is that David Martin's lawsuit hits. Live 5 talks about it after we broke it. Shouldn't the SCCJ have just like they have a PR
team,
have it
right?
monitoring team
Right.
that follows the state and says, hey, this officer's just been accused of this. And that should stimulate an investigation. Now, do they do this now? I'm not aware that they do.
I'm not aware either.
And-
We did not have the opportunity to ask these questions.
Well, no, we did actually have the opportunity to ask them because I sent an email to Swindler with I don't
They
know
just
how many
didn't respond.
questions on it. They just didn't respond. So they haven't responded yet. Maybe they will down the line. But
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is that nowhere in their publicly available information do they suggest that they have a body within the organization that actively looks for indications out in the public that an officer or officers may have committed a crime or
Who does the oversight? Where's the oversight committee?
right.
When you go to SLED's website and when you go to the SCCJA's website, it's all about unicorn kisses. Look how good we are. We're accountable. We're transparent. We are making sure we're policing the officers. We are the watchdogs.
Yeah. Policing the police is
Yeah.
the police. It's just, man, it's a lot.
It's not.
So I'd love to see their proclamations of their masthead become true, but I don't see them as being true right now. Excuse me.
Right.
So,
Okay, so waiver of rights, failure to request a hearing within the 3 years, the 3-year time frame results in a waiver of the right to a hearing, and the SCCJA will proceed with a final decision. This is telling me that it can take up to 3 years for an officer to become decertified.
I think that if the case demanded it, the SCCJA retains the right to decertify them on the spot or
Right.
wherever they want along the chain of events. But they may revisit that down the line should the opportunity require, and may reverse course if there's some kind of proof that can be given that suggests that they got it wrong.
Final agency decision. Law enforcement training, it says they can decide to deny certification for a specified time period or permanently.
I don't know.
So, question is, who makes up the training council? Is it police officers?
Well, I mean,
Would think.
mostly you would think that
Mm.
that those doing training would be officers themselves. Right? I mean, Swindler himself came to become director of the agency by being a law enforcement officer.
Right.
And as far as I can see in his resume, which is public, in quite a few agencies, and he sits on the board
Yep.
of
He's Homeland Security, I believe.
FBI or something.
Yeah.
All kinds.
Yeah.
High level dude.
Yes, very much so.
And when I spoke to him, by the way, he did not project anything but taking that role.
And you spoke to him
Very
several months ago.
Yeah, I spoke to him several months ago, and I talked to him, as I said before, directly about Sean. I discussed the practices where decertification were concerned with him, and he is certainly a no nonsense individual. He's got a lot of gravitas when you speak to
Right.
him,
Right.
and his resume is extremely impressive.
It is.
And he certainly projects that he's got all the right intentions. So this is not an indictment of him in any way.
Now, and I'll tell you that I have spoken with a local police chief, not local to Ellery, but local to Orangeburg County area. Swindler is no nonsense. This police chief told me he was no nonsense, and you do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I got that. He certainly projects that. Let's talk a little bit about transparency where public trust is concerned, because a lot of these things that involve a police officer's status or a police officer's even considerations of whether or not they're certified or decertified, they happen somewhat shrouded in secrecy. The public rarely sees internal investigations, right? Or even knows about the particulars around transfers. So there's these gaps, to say the least, in transparency, and they really hamper the oversight and the accountability, because they make space for a breach of morality.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
They make space for the receiving agency to fudge this or that, or to not even address it.
Or not do a background check.
Well, I'm talking about, but not doing a background check. You know, what you're talking about there is dereliction of duty. Okay?
Absolutely.
But what I'm talking about is like a willful blind eye. In other words, or a willful silence. Whereas, let's take Josh Dieter in my assertion for as an example, receiving Mike Mann and not saying to the SCCJA, hey, I released this guy because he was non-compliant in a requirement to have therapy on a schedule. And when he refused it, I let him go.
Right.
Now I'm bringing him back. To my knowledge, he hasn't done the therapy, but can I just erase that part of this history and bring him back? Or what do you think? Right. And it would seem to me that, of course, you would err on the side of caution, and the certifying agency would go, well, if he was non-compliant then, he can come back, but he's going to have to be compliant with what you required of him when he was dismissed. That seems to me to make total sense.
Yes.
Did it happen? Probably not. Did Josh Dieter go through the imaginary set of circumstances that I just asserted? Probably not. Do I know that for sure? No. I admit that I am, and I'm sure upon hearing this, and he will, Dieter or his friend Murphy, they'll do what they've done before at court and make some retroactive documents that say, yes, I did do that.
Yeah.
Because that's right in your wheelhouse. Retroactive documents, you've got that wired. But truthful reporting, no, I doubt it. How do we bring some transparency, or not we, but how does the SCCJA bring some transparency to the public reporting some of these processes are concerned? Shouldn't the public know easily when an officer is dismissed from one agency for something and rehired somewhere else?
Make the documents public. We had to go through hoops to get the policing history for the multiple officers that we've requested. and you have to do FOIA requests. Why not we just tried to look up decertified officers in the state of South Carolina online, and the website that it brought us to, we had to be members of. You try to get the membership and you have to be a law enforcement official.
Right.
So where is that transparency? Make it public record. Look, the taxpayers pay their salaries. The money that we put into the tax system pays their salaries. We need to know what our officers are doing, what they're being charged with. Are they good officers and not good? What's their history?
But the public can hold them accountable better than anyone.
Right.
And maybe a good idea, it sounds probably a little dramatic, but maybe a good idea is, there's a sex offender list.
Right.
And they have that so that when the sex offender moves into your neighborhood, you know about it, right?
Right.
Well, if an officer has a history of breaking their oath or bad behavior, misbehaving, as you like to say, maybe they should land on the naughty list that should be public, and people should be able to know, hey, this officer they just hired, he's problematic or she's problematic in their history. We need to keep a close eye on them. Also, given the fact that the SCCJA likes to rely on third parties to report
Right.
them so that they can get the information they need to act, this would be another third party through which they can gather information and take the considerations that we suggest they should.
Right. Solving the world's problem.
I don't know.
At least South Carolina's, I don't know.
I don't know. We're talking about how the system can improve.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about it before we wrap things up right after this. Okay, we're back. And we're going to talk a little bit about badge hopping first before we dive into the rest of our ideas.
So we've kind of been talking about gaps, and one major gap is the ability for an officer dismissed or sanctioned at one agency to potentially be hired at another agency.
We see it happen all the time.
All the time.
David Martin, for example, got fired from Ellery for testing positive for methamphetamine. Turned out that it was his prescription for his ADHD. It was his medication. He had every right to be on it.
Right.
And they dismissed him anyway. However, he was dismissed for that reason, went right over and got hired lickety-split over at Santee right next door. Officers do it all the time. They get fired, they get dismissed, or they, what was the thing? Voluntarily separated, whatever it is. Right. And they move on to the next agency next door. Mike Mann did it. They all do it. And that is called badge hopping.
Right. When I did hair back in the late 90s, it was called shop hopping.
Shop hopping.
Yeah.
Why do they call it that?
Because many cosmetologists would go from one shop to another.
Of course. Were you a shop hopper?
No,
Tell me the truth.
I was not.
Not at all?
No.
How many shops did you work in?
I worked in 3.
Shop hopper.
The first shop that I worked in was a small little shop in Somerville, but they had a location in Mount Pleasant. And the Mount Pleasant location came up for sale. So I bought that location.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And then
shop hopper shop owner.
It was an 11-station salon, and it was in Mount Pleasant before Mount Pleasant became Mount Pleasant.
Nice.
And I was broke as a joke. I was working crazy hours. So closed the shop after about a year, and I went and rented a booth at another local shop.
Now, that brings up a good point that if you've ever had a bad haircut, there needs to be a reporting system for those folks.
Yeah, absolutely.
They need to be, the public deserves
to know. Yeah, I've seen some bad ones.
So talk to me about badge hopping. I mean, we've sort of touched on it a lot in that.
Right. So sanctioned at one agency to potentially be hired at another if the transfer process is weak.
What are they saying if the transfer process is weak? The transfer process is weak because
it is very weak.
Right. So let's just talk about that really quick. Right now, the transfer process is I leave or get fired or whatever, and I pop over to this other agency and they hire me. Now, 2 things are supposed to happen for the SCCJA. One, the agency where the officer left is required to supply the SCCJA with all that information we told you about at the top of the show. That is a requirement. They have to do it. They have to do it within a certain amount of time. the receiving agency needs to make sure that that's been done. Right now, that's a cute little way for the SCCJA to put the management of receiving the information they may or may not act on, should they have it, in the hands of third parties. In other words, okay, departing agency, you got to report to us. Receiving agency, you got to report to us. Go. And what are we going to do? We're going to sit over here in the fog until you do. Oh, and by the way, we're going to make it extremely easy for you to lie to us and tell us how great this guy or girl is, or tell us how fine this officer's history has been. Man, that is
because we're not going to dig in. We're not going to dig in and do our own research.
That is as broke as you were as a joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
It is, the whole system is broken.
Right. Everything is broken.
Yeah.
As
it
Dylan
says here that the SCCJA processes pre-employment requests for previously certified officers transferring from other states.
Hold on, I ADD'd on that.
So from other states, the SCCJA has processes in place for pre-employment requests.
Yeah, of course. Somebody who wants to transfer.
So that's from other states. But when we're talking about intrastate rehires within the state of South Carolina, the smaller police departments, they don't do their due diligence, and neither does the SCCJA.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm sure some of them do their due diligence, but to be clear, there is a lot of room, as we've stated, for them to fudge it, not tell the whole story, and protect the officer and their future. You know, it's one cop looking at another saying, I don't want to take this guy or girl's certification. I don't want to, prevent them from making a living and putting food on the table. So we'll just say it was a voluntary separation and let them move on to greener pastures. Ah, man, that is super problematic. And that's where the SCCJA fails. That is their responsibility to solve that problem, no matter how difficult.
Exactly.
I mean, that is a complete and total failure of functionality.
And when the receiving department receives a new officer, if that receiving department only checks to see if their certification is current, they have no clue if they've left troubles behind in their previous agency.
Right.
No idea.
Right.
So the due diligence is really the responsibility of the receiving agency. So that's where the breakdown is. The breakdown is the sending agency doesn't report accurately. The SCCJA doesn't really do a whole lot when they're talking about intrastate within the state of South Carolina transfers, and the receiving agency just makes sure that their certification is up to date. They may do a background check and see that there's no criminal history, but what are they doing to investigate if they are leaving troubles behind at the previous agency?
Well, I made notes on some of what the improvements might be, and one of them was sort of like this multi-state database that you found, but that just lists whether an officer is certified or decertified. And it probably lists why, I would imagine, although I can't see it because I'm not an officer or I'm not a law enforcement professional. In my notes, it came up that a statewide database accessible by employing agencies should show decertified, suspended, or resigned under investigation officers, right?
Yes.
All those things. That obviously the pre-employment forms should disclose investigations, separations for cause, transfers. The SCCJ's post letter form already asks about previous decertifications, but it could go further.
Yes.
There needs to be, as we said, enhanced transparency and public oversight. So publish a summary of reports annually showing the number of decertifications and the reason categories, maybe using that deadly sins list, for example, and then the agency compliance and put that out to the public.
It needs to be publicized. We need to be able to click on a website and see the officers that work for our town.
Right. And here's the other thing. Do you know if the SCCJA has a 3-digit number like 911 that a person can call to report an officer's bad behavior?
Star HP. All you got to do is call Star HP
Is that
when
true?
you're on the highway
Oh, but
and report an impaired driver.
let's have the SCCJA set that up so that they can encourage citizens to report on their jurisdictions.
And make it anonymous. Have the ability to do anonymous reporting, because I've heard it 100 times here in Ellery. No, I'm not gonna do that because I'm fearful.
And so I just want to say, as we come to a close, that the municipalities themselves can do better as well.
Absolutely.
And I think the SCCJA can play a pivotal role in holding the municipality to account through maybe a series of penalties or something.
Right.
And,
in our case here in Ellery, our police chief was the one behaving badly.
the one who was supposed to report himself
Mhm.
for behaving badly.
Right.
What a breakdown. At the end of the day, it matters so much because, and especially in small towns, I would argue, because officers wield extraordinary power.
Yes.
They have the power to detain. They have the power to arrest. They even have the power to use force. So when that trust is broken, the entire community's confidence in public safety is
Correct.
undermined. If an officer leaves one agency under a cloud of suspicion and resurfaces at another, then the community he serves may be at greater risk.
We, the community, we need to be aware of that.
The damn right we do. But again, so does the SCCJA.
Right.
And you
Right.
can see clearly where it may well be possible that
That's
they're
right.
not, or that
That's
there's
right.
at least a period of time where they're not. I'm sure that the certification process is done well. They seem to exhaust practically every measure in the certification of an officer.
It's the decertification process that is broken, completely broken.
That is right. And both of those things, not one, serve as a safeguard and a signal
That's right.
that misconduct has consequences. Both those things serve as a signal to the officer and to the community that the SCC is serious about their job. However, the breakdown where decertification is concerned tells another story. And both of those elements, as I say, are required to truly safeguard the community.
And they're equally as important.
Exactly. And if you want to signal to the public that misconduct has consequences, then you not only say it, you have to actually take measures to demonstrate it.
Yes.
And for rural agencies in particular, where we have limited resources,
Rural agencies are tough because everybody knows everybody. You've got to think about the small town that we live in. And Utahville, who has also had some very questionable things happen recently, they're even less people. I looked it up today and they're less than 300 population.
right, fewer
So
than
they're half of what Ellery is.
and for these little towns, robust state level oversight becomes more critical.
It does. It does. You would think that in the bigger cities like the Somerville or the Berkeley counties or, Horry County, not necessarily Horry County, but Mount Pleasant, you would think in these bigger areas that that's where the oversight would be. But I'll tell you what, they've got it narrowed down. Those bigger police departments have got it narrowed down. And you better keep your nose clean in those bigger police departments.
It brings up another thing, which is a person listening to this could make the argument that, well, hey, the public needs to have the courage to come forth and report when an officer's doing wrong. Well, look at my case.
Right.
I reported it to everybody. I went to senators. I went to SLED. I went to the SCCJA. I went to the FBI. I went to the
You were the
ATF.
only one that went. There were other people in Ellery that went on your behalf and their behalf.
And what happened? What happened was I was falsely arrested. Then I was falsely arrested again on a malicious prosecution, fully targeted by the former police chief, who still targets me to this day. That's what happened. So you have to ask yourself, does the average person, and I'm not saying above or below average, I'm just saying the average Joe on the street, does that person have the strength of character to say, fuck it, I'm going to go after this guy? No, the answer is no. It's, first of all, it's difficult on so many levels. It challenges your relationships. It challenges your fears. It's an odyssey, to say the least. And the average person doesn't even have the time, let alone the will, to be able to do it. So that argument has flaws. The reality is that if you are the agency responsible for providing the certification, then you are the agency to freaking figure out how you are to logistically to maintain it. And that's what you haven't figured out, SCCJA. I think that the one way that you can go about trying to institute improvements is by being vocal and bringing it to the public's attention, and the hope that you'll bring it to legislators' attention who really have the ability to try to implement some of these changes, or at least to start the process of legislating it so that the SCCJA, for example, can implement. Well, that's going to do it for us today. This has been a really interesting conversation. It's frustrating because there's not an easy resolution to just grab and insert here. And that's kind of a bummer. But at the same time, nothing worth doing was easy. Somebody said that, and I guess it's true.
Yep.
I think my dad used to say that if I ever showed signs of laziness.
It's worth doing. It's worth doing right.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching us. We really appreciate you here at Left, Right, and Local. Our next episode, Krista told you, we're going to jump. I think we're going to cover sled on the next one, aren't we?
Yes. And then we're all.
No one is safe.
I'm very excited in the coming weeks. We don't have an exact date yet, but we're going to sit down with some folks from Utahville and talk about some of the things that are going on in their small town community as well.
In the not too distant future, the book comes out and we're going to switch to serial mode and go chapter by chapter.
That's right.
Very excited about that.
And one thing that I want to remind our listeners of, if you have stories, if you have concerns, if you have ideas that you'd like for us to cover, please don't hesitate to email us at info@leftrightlocal.com.
Nice one. That was an important one. I always forget to do that.
And then you can also follow us at leftrightlocal.com. I did not say the www.
That's right. You did
until after.
Very good, by the way. And leftrightlocal.com is practically everything until you get into YouTube. But, you know, if you go to X, if you go to TikTok, you go
Facebook,
to Instagram, you're going to find us at Left, Right, Local. At YouTube, it's Left, Right, and Local. At Left, Right, and Local. You can go to the channel. You can subscribe, which would be great for us.
And we want your ideas. We want your story ideas. We do have a couple of new advertisers that we are working on their ads.
Yes.
We've got Santee Nutrition.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Love that. And we've got Press Me, which is a brand new local t-shirt shop here in Ellery.
I like that name.
Press Me. Yeah. All the time. Press Me. Go for it. Go ahead.
All right, guys. So stay curious and stay engaged and keep watching The Watchmen because nobody else is doing it.
That's right. Thanks, y'all.
Catch you next time.
Good night.
Good night.